Fixed deposits, right? For so many of us, that's kind of the definition of a safe investment. You put your money away, you get a return that's guaranteed, and your original amount, your principal, is totally protected. It feels solid, like you're steadily growing your wealth. But are you really?
So let's just jump right into the million rupee question. What actually happens when the money your investments are making just can't keep up with the rising price of, well, everything? Answering this one question is the absolute key to figuring out if you're actually moving forward financially.
And this brings us to a really powerful idea, something called the investment treadmill. It perfectly describes that feeling of working so hard to save and invest, doing all the right things, but when you look up, you realize you haven't actually gone anywhere.
I mean, it's a perfect analogy, isn't it? You're running hard, you're sweating, the numbers on the little screen are going up, but you haven't actually moved an inch across the room. Your bank account balance gets bigger, sure, but in terms of what you can actually buy with that money, you might just be standing still. So how do we get off this thing? Well, it all starts with understanding two very simple but very important terms: nominal returns and real returns. And I'm telling you, getting your head around this is the single most important step to knowing if your money is truly working for you. So on one side, you've got the nominal return. Think of this as the sticker price, right? It's the big, shiny percentage the bank advertises. Get 7% on your FD. It's the number you see. But on the other side, and this is the important one, you've got the real return. This is the number that actually matters. This tells you how much your purchasing power, what you can actually go out and buy, has really increased. And figuring this out is surprisingly easy. You don't need a fancy finance degree. Your real return is simply your nominal return minus the inflation rate. That's it. With just that one little bit of math, you can cut through all the marketing and see what's really going on. So let's put some numbers on it. Let's say your FD is earning that 7% nominal return. Sounds pretty good. But at the same time, the cost of groceries, gas, everything has gone up by 6%. That's inflation. So did you really gain 7%? Nope. Your actual gain in buying power, your real return, is just a measly 1%. But hold on, because there's one more piece to this puzzle. And frankly, it's the one that most of us tend to forget about. And it can change everything. I'm talking about taxes. And this is where things can get a little painful. So let's start with that 7% return. If you're in the 30% tax bracket, the tax man takes his cut right off the top. Your return immediately drops to just 4.9%. Now, for the final blow, we take that 6% inflation we talked about and subtract it. And you are left with negative 1.1%. Let that sink in for a moment. Your bank statement will tell you that you earned interest. But in the real world, your ability to buy things has actually gone down. You've essentially paid taxes for the privilege of losing purchasing power. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Okay, so that's the theory. But how did this whole thing actually play out for millions of real savers in India? Let's take a look at the last decade of data and see how fixed deposit rates really stacked up against inflation. The story of the last 10 years for FD investors really unfolded in three distinct acts. First, from 2014 to 2018, we had the good period. Then things started to change from 2019 to 2021. Let's call that the squeeze begins. And finally, 2022 arrived, and it was a serious wake-up call. And here's the data that tells that story. Just keep your eyes on that last column, real return. You can clearly see the good period, right, from 2014 to 2018. Those are some healthy, positive returns. But then watch what happens. The squeeze begins, and that return gets smaller and smaller until it's almost gone by 2020. And then came 2022.
And this was the moment everything became crystal clear. In 2022, the average FD rate, that's the lighter bar, was 5.8%. But inflation, the darker bar, just took off, hitting 6.7%. For the first time in a long time, the average FD investor was officially going backward. Now, to be fair, things did start to get a bit better in 2023 as interest rates started to climb. But for a lot of people, a critical lesson had been learned the hard way about the hidden dangers lurking in so-called safe investments. So, after going through all of that, what does it all really mean for you and your money? Let's boil it all down to the real takeaways.
It really comes down to four crucial points. First, always think in real returns, not the flashy, nominal numbers. Second, remember your principal might be safe, but your purchasing power is what's truly at risk. Third, don't ever forget about taxes. They can turn what looks like a win into a real loss. And finally, relying only on FDs can actually be a pretty risky strategy, especially when inflation is running hot.
And that brings us right back to the most important question of all, and it's the one I want to leave you with. When you look at your savings, remember that protecting your principal is only half the battle. The real question you need to ask is this: are you protecting your purchasing power? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.